Once again, a warm welcome for this third module of Unit 1, that is Environment. And in this module, we are going to have a look at global environmental problems, that is greenhouse effect and acid rain. So we will have a look at these two things. We will understand what and how the greenhouse effect is and what acid rain is. And as we explain the terms and as we elaborate the mechanism of the problem and evaluate the effects, we will also recommend some mitigation in this module. So greenhouse effect. What is greenhouse effect? First of all, let us understand, my dear friends, that we need sun, we need heat, we need light so that life survives on this earth. If we don't have heat and light, then we cannot survive on this earth. Now there is an effect, that is the rays that are coming from sun, the energy, the radiations that are coming from the sun are to be utilized on this earth by trapping it. So what is the process? The process is called as greenhouse effect. So the process by which the radiations from the planet's atmosphere warms the planet surface to a temperature that is above what it would be without this temperature. That is, if this without this atmosphere, if we did not have this blanket of atmosphere around the earth, then we will not be able to capture that heat which is required to sustain life, for the survival of life on this earth. So this is basically called as the greenhouse effect. That is how actually earth stays warm, by trapping of heat. So in greenhouse effect, there is trapping of heat, that is very much important, and by trapping the heat, the life will go on. So what we get from the sun is the visible light, we get ultraviolet light, we get also infrared radiations, we get X-rays, we get gamma rays, radio waves, all these type of radiations that come down from the sun. We can have a look at this presentation that is made over here from the sun. The rays are coming down, the different type of radiations. So the solar radiations are reflected by earth. Once it comes down to the earth, it is reflected back into the atmosphere. So that means heat goes back, light also goes back. So what atmosphere does is, that is the different layers of atmosphere, we have these gases which we call as greenhouse gases. So some of the infrared radiation passes through the atmosphere. Now this infrared is reflected by earth. Once the heat energy comes to earth, it reflects back infrared radiations. So these infrared radiations that are reflected are absorbed by the atmosphere, and once again these greenhouse gases will re-emit it in different directions. We will see it in the next simple presentation that is made. The infrared radiation that is emitted by the earth also warms up the atmosphere, and as I have said, this is very important for our survival. So this is how it happens. Let us see this mechanism. The sunlight reaches the earth and some energy is reflected back, and this some energy that is reflected goes in all type of directions because of the greenhouse gases. So the greenhouse gases will help us to trap the heat, and this is called as greenhouse effect. So this greenhouse effect, as I have already said, is very important for life to survive. Now these are the main greenhouse gases that we have in our atmosphere. We have water vapors, we have carbon dioxide, we have methane, we have ozone, that is a greenhouse gas in troposphere, but it is a protective layer in the stratosphere. So same gas in two different layers behaving in two different ways. We have nitrous oxide, we have chlorofluorocarbons. And my dear friends, once again let me repeat, these are important gases that are in our atmosphere which are required for life to sustain, because we need heat. So these are the trappers of heat. They trap the heat that comes down from the sun and is reflected back from the earth. But what has happened over the centuries, the problem is the greenhouse gas layer has thickened. Same way the ozone layer has been depleted, the greenhouse gases, that is the layer of greenhouse gases, is thickened. Both the ways it is harmful. That is, we need that optimum layers both in the stratosphere, that is ozone layer, as well as the greenhouse gases to trap the heat. So since there is additional layer, more heat is captured and earth is warmed more than what it is required, and that is what we normally called as global warming. The earth is warming, the globe is warming because the greenhouse gases layer has been thickened. So more heat is captured, and all this, as we already know, is because of the anthropogenic activities. The activities that we do, without these activities, the greenhouse effect is a normal process that is required, but because of the anthropogenic activities that we have already seen in the previous module, it affects the greenhouse gases or the emission of the greenhouse gases. How they are emitted? Let's have a look at this chart. We have seen the different sectors. We have industrial sector, we have transport sector, we have land use which is changing day by day. The biomass burning and how we use our land today, especially in the name of development, the land use pattern has changed drastically and it is giving up more emissions, that is especially the greenhouse gases. Even agricultural production, it gives up the emissions. We have fossil fuels that we are using, they are giving so much emissions. We have wrong ways of disposal of our waste. We are not treating our waste properly. Once again, there is a lot of emission, especially in the waste disposal. We have methane, that is a dangerous gas. Even in order to produce our electric power stations, there is a lot of emission that is released into this air, in the atmosphere. So the main gases, my dear friends, carbon dioxide is one of the main component of the greenhouse gases. Methane is the second one as far as quantity is concerned, but it is a very effective gas to trap the heat. Also nitrous oxide and the other gases that we have just seen, even the water vapor, the droplets of water vapor that are there in the atmosphere, they trap heat. So this is how heat increases. Now because of this, there are, especially if we look at the industrial process over here, we have the gases like nitrous oxide, sulfur oxides. Let's have a look at these, which create the acid rain, what we call as acid rain. So what is acid rain? We can say it is the effect of all the anthropogenic activities, the developmental activities, or the activities which release the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. It is the result of that. So how it is? Acid rain or acid deposition is basically a broad term that can be applied to any type of precipitation. That is, it can be liquid or it can be dust or rain or snow. So this deposition comes with acidic component, that is, it is acidic in nature, and that is why we call this as acid rain. Now what happens? The process that we can see from our industries over here, and from our transport sector, and also other activities that are there, maybe our agricultural activities and other activities that we can see where there is release of greenhouse gases and these pollutants, especially the pollutants will go up in the atmosphere, and once they go up into the atmosphere, these pollutants will be transformed into acidic particles, especially when they mix with the droplets of water. Once the acidic matter is formed, it travels in all direction, the way it is led by the wind. And finally, once it gets mixed up with the water, it will come down as rain, as snow, as dust or whatever we can call it. Once it comes down, it affects the organisms that are there. Not only the organisms, it actually affects everything. We'll just have a look at this other presentation also. So the gases which are released are acidic in nature, and the gases get carried away by wind. They combine with water droplets, form acid, and the acid comes down. Basically, this is acid rain. And my dear friends, what happens with this acid rain? Acid rain actually affects nearly everything. Anything and everything we can say. The plants, the soil, the trees, the buildings, and even the statues that we build today, they are corroded by acid rain. So acid rain has been found very hard on the trees, the vegetation. It leads to weakening of the, it weakens the plants by washing away the protective film on the leaves. The cuticle that is there is washed off, and that is how the leaves will find stunted. And the beautiful pomegranate that we can see the pomegranate that has different type of colors over there, spots. We see the leaves that are affected. Like this, there are many other plants, or any type of plant we can say is affected by acid rain. Not only the plants, it also affects the monuments, buildings, statues, and we have our most beloved structure in India, the Taj Mahal. We all love our Taj Mahal. And in the years that are gone by, some 10 years back, maybe you were small that time, and that time we had this problem where Taj Mahal was changing its color. In recent years, we have heard about this. And why Taj Mahal started changing its color? Because of the acid rain that came down. In Agra, there are so many industries that have come up which give up these pollutants, and it comes down as rain. It is not that only in Agra, and whatever goes up in Agra will come down only in Agra. Whatever goes up, as we have already seen, it is transported to different areas. It can come down anywhere and everywhere. And that is why this acid rain is very dangerous. It comes down in water also. We can take an example of a lake. A healthy lake has a pH of 6.5. That is, it is a normal pH or slightly alkaline pH that is required for the life in this water to survive and to have a simple activity. But what happens with acid rain? It raises the level of acidity. So as the acidity level is raised, it becomes difficult for the fish and other marine life that is there in water to survive. We can look at this chart over here. We have the snails which are we can say they are the most sensitive ones, and at the pH, if the pH comes below 6, then they are affected. We have clams. If you remember, in recent times we have heard about the clams, especially in Zuari Bay, that is Chikali and Sankwal Bay, where the clams have resurfaced. Particularly, I can say they have resurfaced because the acidic nature of that water had come down, because the activities that were happening in the Chikali Sankwal Bay had stopped because of COVID-19 situation. And hence, the acidic nature of water came down, and the clams which are sensitive to acidity once again resurfaced. You can see this chart. At the end, we have a frog. So frog can live even in acidic water, but not beyond 4 pH. That is, if the frog is the last one who can survive in this atmosphere, in this pH, then after that the lake is called a dead lake. A lake or any water body is considered as dead if the pH of that water goes below 4. So it becomes acidic. This is the effect of the acid rain. So my dear friends, what we need to do? We need to mitigate. And for mitigation, once again, we have the international community coming together under United Nations. They had Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement. Of course, we are not going into details of these protocols and agreements, but know that these are the protocols and agreements at international level. The entire world has come together. Kyoto Protocol was signed by 192 countries only. Some countries, especially USA, did not sign. So my dear friends, this Kyoto Protocol actually sets a commitment targets that have legal binding, a legal force. Recently in 2016, Paris Agreement, the same Kyoto Protocol is taken forward, but the only change that is made is the emphasis is put on the consensus building, that is not by force, but understanding that we need to do this, we need to mitigate this. And that is why the countries are allowed to come voluntarily, and each country takes up the targets, and the nation, each country decides, okay, this is our target. So the target that is taken by each country, they take them in consonance with the climate goals, the sustainable development goals that we are supposed to meet by 2030. So there is a political encouragement. Since politics today takes care or runs everything that we do and the way we live, over here the political will is generated by Paris Agreement. So rather than forcing them legally that you have to do this, you have to do this, here we have the agreement that is agreed by all the countries. 197 countries of the world have come together. We will deal with these in the later modules, in the next units perhaps. So we are not going into the details of Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement. Till then, my dear friends, what we need to do is restrict the use of fossil fuels, because the fossil fuels burning is the greatest source of releasing sulfur oxides, nitrous oxides, and creating this acid rain. So what we need to do is focus more on the sustainable energy resources. We have seen the renewable resources and non-renewable resources. So instead of using the non-renewable resources like fossil fuels, we need to go back to the renewable resources, the inexhaustible resources that will help us to use the energy for ourselves and at the same time take care and protect the environment. So some of the simple things that we already know, like using public transportation, that is, we decrease the use of personal vehicles, we decrease the carbon footprint that we leave behind for our lives, the lifestyles that we live in. So perhaps we need a change of lifestyle that has to come from the students, that has to come from the families, that has to come in the society, so that with this change we can mitigate the problem of acid rain, we can decrease the thickness of the greenhouse gases that we release in the atmosphere, and we help in mitigating the environmental problems the world is facing today. So stay protected, stay safe, and take care of your environment. Here are some of the references that you can go through. Besides that, there are more references. You can come to the library also, and of course you have the internet services too. We understand when we take care of the environment. Thank you.